right, so last class we looked at sensation, how your body processes external stimuli so that you can make sense of the world. So today we're going to look at perceptions. You were asked to tell me, what do you see within this image? Some of you said that you saw a young woman, some of you said that you saw an old woman, some of you identified that you actually saw both. All right, so what this sensory stimuli is everyone is experiencing the same sensation, but your brain is putting it together in different ways. All right, for those of you who can't see the other image, I have this embedded picture here. All right, so for example, if you can't see the young girl, the young woman, all right, well, if you look at the image, those green lines indicate the side of her face, the yellow circle indicates where her ear is, and those red lines, they indicate the sides of her neck, and then she's wearing a little necklace. So hopefully that helps you perceive and see that image. For those of you who can't see the old woman, well, if you look at the picture that's on the right, you can see here, well, the yellow line represents her large nose that she has. She has her green eyes open and facing out, and then that red lips is down there before you see her chin. All right, so these are two different perceptions, two different pictures that you can see while looking at just the blank stimuli from that single center picture. All right, for this picture, you were asked to tell me what you saw. And most people said that they saw a bunch of black and white dots and blobs. All right, a few of you were able to accurately identify that this is actually an image of a cow. So you can see the head there and then its body branching out. All right, we got the same stimuli, but our ability to perceive it, to see it, was very different depending on the context. Whoop. All right, the last one that you were asked to tell me what did you see was this image here. And some of people said that they saw two overlapping triangles. There is not a single triangle in this picture. You see three weird Pac-Man looking things, and then three little, like, I don't know, those lesser than signs that you have in math. Right, their image is there, but they don't form actually a concentric whole. There is no triangle anywhere within this picture. So our topic for today is we're going to look at perception. Once we get all of this sensory stimuli, how does your brain put it together into something so that you can actually interact with your environment and understand your reality? So we'll go through all these basic perception principles that we'll be able to address later on when we get into the specific sensations in depth. All right, so for psychology, when we define perception, it's how we organize those sensations into a usable whole, right? It helps us create meaning within the world around us. And so even though we have all this sensory information coming in, we need the perception element so we can understand it. Because if we don't understand what these sensations are telling us, then we won't be able to interact with it in our environment, and therefore it doesn't truly exist within our mind. So let's go through and look at perception, because it's a really big part of something we call human factors psychology. All right, human factors looks at humans' perceptual abilities and tries to construct elements within our environment that we can easily interact with. All right, for example, have you ever tried to hook up like a DVD player or a game system to your television? All right, well, what they try to do when they construct these technological devices is create them in such a way that you as the user can easily understand it and therefore hook them up quickly and easily. Right? Sometimes it's very simple, sometimes it's really hard. There's that old long-running joke that's very out of date and doesn't exist anymore, but not being able to program the clock on your VCR. Or maybe you have difficulty programming the clock on like your microwave. All right, what human factor psychology would be interested in is why are these what the constructors thought were easy, simple to understand locations kind of difficult for us to put them all together. All right, we could also talk about human factors by how they construct runways for airports. All right, we know when we are driving at night, when we look at the runway from up in the air into the ground, sometimes it looks a lot longer. Sometimes we don't understand that the ground is changing, so there's big hills coming up. Right, so what human factor psychology looks at is how this sensory information is coming into our brains and altering our perceptions in the hopes of constructing things to make it safer. All right, so increasing the light that's on the ground, using different colors markings on the runway to help pilots understand this is getting longer or shorter so they can accurately navigate the air when they land. All right, so what human factors would be very interested in is all of this perceptual elements and how we process some of this sensory information. Whoop. All right, so one way that we know that humans process our sensory information is we choose what to pay attention to and what to ignore. All right, we're selectively attentive, which means sometimes we're blind to certain things happening around us. All right, we're processing over 11 million bits of sensory information consistently. All right, some of that is being thrown out because of sensory adaptation. All right, sometimes there's so much happening that we can only focus on a small amount of it. So in theory, I don't know, hopefully you're listening to my lecture of this, you're reading the information that's written on the slide there, but you can ignore the fact that your mom is vacuuming in the other room, or you hear your dad doing the dishes in the kitchen, right? So we have these different elements, and we're able to only really focus on 40 pieces of information at a time. And so we naturally and intuitively filter out unnecessary sensory information in the hopes of us to be able to focus and be able to accurately perceive the needed reality. So to illustrate this, I want you to watch the basketball clip. All right, I've posted the link. It's titled Selective Attention. Right, and so what this illustrates is our ability to focus on important information so that we can answer questions that are asked of us rather than get distracted or changed. Right, sometimes this is very good, sometimes this is very bad. Right, so explain to me what's the problem illustrated within this basketball experiment that was conducted. Right, what we also know is that when we perceive our reality, it's built off of previous experiences. Right, so for example, we've been raised in a very rectangular environment. Our buildings are all shaped in rectangles. Most of the rooms that we interact with are rectangular in space. And so therefore, we are easily able to tell size and distance of things based off of the constructions of our world around us. So what you see illustrated in this picture here is a famous illusion. It's called the Mueller-Lyer illusion. Right, if you look at the red lines in the center, by the ticket window and then the back by the theater door, those lines are the exact same size. But when we look at it, we perceive the one in the back by the theater door being a lot longer than the line in the front by the ticket window. Right? Why? Well, because we know that's how things work in the real world. Right? When I'm out in the real world and I'm actually in this building, well, I know that something that's close to me is going to be a lot bigger in my visual field compared to something that's further away from me. Right? The wall cannot be the same size as a window. And so our brain actually shifts our perception so that we are confused and we actually think that the further line is longer rather than the closer line here. Right? This is something known as top-down processing, where our cerebral cortex will take in information and perceive it in such a way by using logical reasoning built off of our previous experiences. And so it's a way of kind of looking at the world around us. Another thing that's built off of our previous experiences, again by being raised within these rectangular environments, is the three-dimensional optical illusion known as the Ames room. Right? If you look at the picture you see in this slide, right, this larger photo that's closer to the right is what the Ames room is actually constructed as. Right? The floor is tilted upwards, the back wall is actually slanted away from you, and you're forced to look through that one little window. Well, by forcing you to look through that one little window, when you see the room, it's like the small little inset picture you see below. We falsely think that the person who's standing on the right is much taller than the person who's standing on the left. Well, in reality, they're kind of the same size, right? Hollywood will use this a lot within television shows and movies. For example, this forced perspective was used to make Hagrid look really big within all of the Harry Potter films. It was used within Lord of the Rings to make the hobbits look a lot smaller than the other actors. Right? Yes, they hired small actors, but they also staged them in such a way where they looked much shorter than they actually were. Right? So to look at the Ames room in action, I've embedded another video. All right, this is the one that has the Spanish title. You don't have to watch the full thing, but just watch it long enough to get the feel of what the Ames room is like. I know that the music is annoying, but if you want, you can mute it. But go through and look at the Ames room optical illusion and compare that to the Mueller-Lyer optical illusion, and how do those two things show how our experiences with these rectangular environments actually distort our perceptions of what our senses are telling us from our visual field. Right? It's not just our vision that's organized by our perceptions. All right, hearing works the same way. If you listen to an old traditional metronome, all right, it's just click, click, click. But usually when musicians are listening to it, part of the clicks sound a little bit louder. People that are counting time and rhythm so that they can know the metrics, the meters of the music. Sorry, I'm not a musician. All right, they can actually hear the click that indicates you're moving from the first beat to the next beat. All right, when in reality, it's all the same note. Same thing with the ticking of the clock. Most people hear tick, tock, tick, tock. All right, when in reality, most traditional clocks, they don't have that true talk sound. It's all the same, but our brain just tricks us. If you ever listen to a dripping faucet, right, some people, even if it's set at the same rhythm of drops, they hear some being louder or quieter. And so our previous experiences, our previous realities will shape the way that we organize these sensory details into usable wholes so we can hopefully use them. All right, for musicians, they need to be able to hear that louder click as we move from the one beat to the next beat within the musical score that you're following. And so it allows us to make a better sense of the world by following this organizational pattern. All right, so if you're going to organize this perception, what do you see? Do you see optical or do you see illusion? Which word stands out to you? And can you see both of them? Are you seeing all the good that's present in this picture? Or are you more focused on the evil that's hidden amongst us? Can you easily see both words in this image? All right, or how about this? You and I, we have a symbiotic relationship. I'm here to hopefully teach you. You are there to hopefully learn something. And so we have this back and forth connection where we both need each other to kind of exist. Right, how we choose to organize these perceptions is built off of previous experiences. So our perceptual set is it's kind of similar to a mental set. Right, do you remember mental set from our cognition unit? It's our way of approaching new problems based off of our previous experiences. Well, with perceptual sets, it's how do I approach new sensory information based off of my previous experiences, my previous beliefs. So I know with some of my classes, we've had a huge argument over do ghosts exist or not. So is anyone a fan of those haunted house shows where they have the ghost hunters go into the haunted house and they play you back the audio and you can hear the haunted voices within the audio? All right, well, the reason why you hear those voices is because you already have an initial belief in the spirit realm. Right? People like me who don't believe in ghosts, they just hear weird staticky noises, right? But you who are told what to listen for, it makes it a little bit easier for you to understand it. Foley artists, they use this understanding to help you hear what's going on, right? When they had the rainburgers that were raining from the sky, right? By having that visual image up there, it helps you actually experience and interpret those sounds as the hamburgers falling, right? The top picture in this image. Is that the Loch Ness Monster? Or is that just a log floating on some water? The picture that's down at the bottom. Is that a flying saucer coming to get us? Or are those just some cool, funky looking clouds? All right, so our perceptual set is how do we interpret these sensations, and it tells us how to organize it into a usable whole so we can make sense of everything. Sorry, I don't know why I keep hitting the wrong thing. All right, part of our perceptions is also because we focus on certain things, we are blind to when it changes in front of us. Right? Change blindness addresses some of the deficiencies, some of the problems in our perceptual abilities. Because we can only focus on a certain amount of things for a period of time, we're often blind to when things change around us. If you're a fan of movies and the trivia that's linked with it, sometimes those like IMDb pages, they'll look at continuity errors within films where the actress is talking and her hair is in front of her shoulder and then behind her shoulder and then in front of her shoulder again. There's a scene in Ocean's 11, the original, the modern one that was with Brad Pitt and George Clooney, and in a conversation, Brad Pitt's eating like shrimp cocktail, and within a 2-minute scene, the shrimp cocktail is in a cup, it's on a plate, he's just holding random shrimp in his hand, like it changes consistently every couple of seconds, right? Most people are blind to those changes. They don't notice those little inconsistencies because they change it out of our vision. At the beginning of the year, when we were looking at the occipital lobe, I played you the Who Done It scene. And they changed 21 different things within that scene, like the rolling pin and the candlestick, the dead body that changed. Right? We are blind to a lot of those changes because we just aren't aware of it. And it's not even just little things that happen in the video world. It can also happen out in the real world where we're talking with people. So I want you to watch this door test. It's the very last video that I have linked there, so the third one that you haven't watched yet. I can't remember the title. But I want you to watch this video and explain to me what's going on in this experiment and how does it illustrate the ideas of change blindness. Why are these people not answering the questions right? Why are they getting confused while trying to give directions to that man? Right? Our perceptions are also able to adapt to our environment. Right? Just like sensory adaptation, if we get used to a bad smell, we stop smelling it anymore. Right? Perceptual adaptation means our brain is capable of adapting to new sensory stimuli and therefore being able to respond to it appropriately. So has anyone ever worn goggles like this? They're sometimes called drunk goggles. Right? What they do is they distort your visual field where everything looks like it's 40 feet shifted to the left or to the right or up or down. And when you're asked to walk a straight line or to high-five somebody, you often trip over the line because your visual field is distorted. Your perception, where you look like you're walking straight, actually doesn't work anymore. And so what happens is when you experience and you work with these things for a few minutes, when you are asked to keep walking a line or keep drawing circles or writing your name, eventually your brain gets used to this new sensory stimuli so that you can now perceive it accurately. So when I test you in the future of being able to walk down the line, be able to high-five somebody, you'll be able to high-five them without punching them in the face. You'll be able to easily walk that straight line. They've had people get used to wearing these drunk goggles and then go and drive a car, and they're able to safely navigate the streets. And so our brain is able to adapt to distorted sensory information so that we can constantly use it to be able to accurately perceive the environment around us. Right? With perceptual adaptation, we do have some inbuilt tendencies, things that are normal and natural for us. So they did another study where they had people wear upside down glasses, where it actually flipped your visual field, where the floor looked like it was on the ceiling and the ceiling looked like it was on the floor. Right? People who were wearing these, it took 8 days for them to adapt. It took 8 days for their perceptions to actually adjust to the new stimuli. And for those 8 days, they felt physically ill. They reported a lot of nausea, a lot of vertigo, which is feeling dizzy. Their emotions were impacted. They felt high rates of depression and anxiety. Right? But after 8 days of wearing these goggles consistently, they were able to safely fly a plane. This is in a simulator, not actually up in the air. But they were able to safely fly this airplane while wearing the goggles. Right? So what it shows is our brain is actually able to adapt and understand new sensory information so we can still easily perceive it and survive within our environment. People who are good at experiencing these things, they eventually develop bi-perceptions, which means it can flip back and forth between two perceptions of reality. It takes a lot of experience, and again, you need to have your brain adapt to the new sensory stimuli. But you can even do this at home where you can switch your perceptions and almost see something two different ways instantaneously. So if you go back to the original picture where it shows both the old woman and the young woman, right? Once you become so experienced with that picture, you can almost see both of them at the same time because you've adapted your brain in such a way where you can actually perceive those two sensory signals and put it together in a way where you can see them both at the same time. The more complex the perception, such as vision and being able to walk, that's way more complex, the longer it is to get to that perceptual adaptation, but it's still something that we're capable of doing. All right, so that's our notes for today, some basic principles of perception. So make sure you go through and complete the questions, the two sets of easily confused terms. Show me that you know the difference between them and how you would apply them to free response questions. If you have any specific questions, I'll be on Zoom at 1, or you can send me an email and I can answer those questions for you then. All right, thank you so much, guys.